our happy hour. We're glad to have you. For those of you that don't know Reshma, I'm going to read just a little bit about her. She is an international adoptee from Calcutta, India. And in 2015, she returned to the city of her birth as the subject of the film Calcutta is My Mother. Her documentary premiered in 2019. She is the founder of DearAdoption.com, a website sharing adoptees' personal lived experiences. She's an avid adoptee advocate, writer, and speaker. She has spoken at several conferences, including ours, and has written multiple adoption-related articles. She enjoys life in Seattle, Washington, with her husband and daughter. So we'd like all of you to welcome Reshma. Yay!
Hi.
So excited to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite, and it's really good to be with everyone. I've been kind of out of adoption land a little bit for the last several months. I take a lot of big, long breaks, which I highly recommend. But it's nice to be back in adoptee company a little bit here tonight. So most of you, I think, really have heard my story in some way, shape, or form. I've done a lot of speaking, and I really enjoy doing that. It's actually, the other thing about this, I can't forget. This is was an opportunity for me to like put on a real clean shirt. So I still have on my gray sweats on the bottom because you can't see the bottom. I have 2 pair of gray sweats I've been fluctuating between throughout quarantine. My dark gray sweats are my nice sweats, so I usually wear those to the grocery store. And then, but right now I'm wearing my sweats that have a hole in the knee, and I won't tell you how many days I've been wearing them, but they match my sweater, and I feel like, you know, if the upper half is good, we're good. So anyway, but yeah, this is like gives me a reason to do something interesting today. So I'm excited about that. Oh, Rebecca put on clean clothes and took a shower today. So look at, I'm halfway there. I took a clean shower, and put on half clean clothes today. So anyway, okay, I can't look at the chat. I'll get so distracted. I'm sorry, that will happen over and over. But anyway, most of you have heard my story at a conference, in an article or a blog post, or some of you I know have seen the film, but the really quick version I'll give you right now in case you don't know me, which is that I was born in Calcutta, India in 1980. I was adopted at 3 months old to the US, and I grew up in a very, very white, very, very loving home. I really lived for most of my life the traditional Christian adoption narrative, which was that I was grateful. I was saved by my white parents. I was definitely given a better life, and spared, the horrific things that happen in India, and everything for me was, so much better. And that's how I grew up. That's what I believed most of my growing up. And I didn't really come out of the fog until I had my daughter. Of course, having this living, breathing, biologically related human in front of me that I could touch and see and knew was real, kind of shocked me out of the fog. I think that's really common, the more adoptees that I've spoken to. So she was born in 2011, and then I slowly kind of emerged, and then slowly started getting brave enough to start writing about adoption a little bit. And in 2014, I started a blog about adoption. It's really funny for me to go back. I just recently went back and read some of those first posts, and it's so adoptee coming out of the fog because I had all these really big feelings that I wanted to share, but then I would follow every line with, but I'm really grateful to be adopted and I really love my family. And then I would kind of venture out a little bit further, and I'd say something a little bit more shocking, like, I don't really understand what it's like to be Indian. And then I would say, but don't worry, I still love my family. And I had a really good experience. So, the in-between middle unfogging part is a really, I think, challenging space to navigate. And something is really freeing when you kind of get to that space where you can just say all the things that you feel. Unfortunately, it's a really privileged space that not a lot of adopted people get to experience. So anyway, in 2015, as Marcy said, I returned to Calcutta. I was a subject of the film Calcutta is My Mother. I know many of you have seen that. We screened that in 2019 at the Ian conference, and that was a really wonderful experience for me. Actually, that was a really emotional experience. I screened the film in 6 cities in 2019, and one of them being my hometown of Portland, Oregon. And I was the most emotional sharing it with you guys. Actually, oh, it's making me choked up right now. Being in a room with adopted people, the bulk of the people in the room were adopted. And then there were adoptive parents there as well, I know, and a lot of first family members. Having the response that you guys gave me, the standing ovation, I know Ridge is on here tonight and he'll remember, I was come undone. I couldn't turn around and face you forever. It was just too much for me to have that sort of just love and support from my peers, from people who know what it's like to be adopted, to see the film. It mattered honestly most to me what you guys thought, what Adoption Land thought of the film. It was my experience. It is what it is. There's nothing that was forced about it, nothing that was edited, but it was very powerful for me to get to experience that with you guys. So anyway, so I filmed the film in 2015. It was the 35th anniversary of the day that I left Calcutta. And then after I came home from Calcutta and had that whole experience, I created Dear Adoption. I created Dear Adoption because I just wanted adopted people to be able to have space to share their stories. One of the biggest things I heard throughout the process of the film was adopted people would reach out to me and say, I have no one to listen, I have nowhere to share. And I just kept thinking, well, we have to rectify that. At the time, I wasn't in Adoption Land at all. I didn't know about the abundance of resources that were out there where adoptees were sharing their stories. I didn't know, I think Adoptees on Haley's podcast was created around the same time, but I think right before Dear Adoption. I didn't even know about that amazing resource. I didn't know about Pamela Caranova's resources. I didn't know about so many other people who are already doing really good work and supporting and elevating adoptee voices. But I just was like, I think we need something, I'm gonna create this. And then I learned about everybody else, and it was just a wonderful experience to kind of be welcomed into that group, to that family, so to speak. So over the last few years, I've done a lot of speaking at conferences, of writing articles and blog posts and screening the film, and it's been really good. But like I said, I've really taken 2020 off from a lot of adoption related things. I take a lot of breaks from social media. I think that when overall Adoption Land has been a really positive place for me, a really wonderful experience. I have just been so encouraged and affirmed and loved on. I found community and understanding for the way that I felt about so many different things that I didn't think anybody else on the earth could understand. And that has been really helpful in healing some lonely parts of me. And I know that a lot of you have experienced that as well. The parts of me that felt like there's something wrong with me because I have, well, for me in particular, I have everything. I have this wonderful life. And I also feel just devastated by, my losses. And so the world and society makes you feel so guilty for that and so ashamed of that. But I've found in Adoption Land, I could be received really well. So while Adoption Land has been this wonderful, very healing space for me, it's also a really tough space, and it can be a really challenging space to navigate and to know where you fit in that space. And I think that's a really important thing. So there's all these different groups within Adoption Land, different subgroups, right? Transracial adoptees, domestic adoptees, adoptees who are late discovery adoptees, all these different categories. And so we kind of find our people as we're, moving through the space. And I think that's really important. But one of the questions and one of the things that I hear a lot and that gets discussed a lot is, sorry, my notes are all on my phone here since I'm using my computer for Zoom. So I have to keep making sure it doesn't lock up on me. Anyway, the thing I hear so often is, how do I tell my story? And how am I unique in this space, this adoptee space, but also among my people? So my story is unique to me. My experience is unique to me, but also there's so much community around and so much understanding around the different ways that we feel about so many different things. So I think that the biggest thing that I've learned in telling my story is, one, you have to really be ready to share your story. And the most important thing, and the mistake I've made, I think, is knowing what parts of my story to tell and to only share those parts when I'm comfortable. I think that sometimes when we come in, and I see it happen, and I don't mean this as a criticism, everybody has to navigate their own path and figure this out, especially in Adoption Land. But I think I see a lot of people come in and share everything and just put everything on the table. I kind of did that. I just shared all the things. I word vomited everywhere and wanted everybody to know all the things about me. I felt like it legitimized me in some sense. And also now I've pulled back from that a lot. And also the once you do decide to kind of start sharing your story, the level of comfort or of depth to which you share at any one given time is not something you're locked into. And so that's something I've really struggled with. I might be at a conference and get asked a question and feel really comfortable sharing more intimate personal details. And then I might be asked 2 weeks later, someone from that same conference, this happens a lot, will send me an email and say, hey, you were talking about this and I want to know more about that, or can you help me with this? And there's two parts to that. One is I might not feel like talking about that anymore. I might not feel that same willingness to be vulnerable. I might not know that person. I might even feel infringed upon that person asking me and feeling like they're now, because they heard me share once, that they're entitled to that aspect of my life or that part. And I really struggled with that. And most of the time, honestly, I just shared. I just felt like I'm obligated to do this. I put myself out there. I have to tell all the things all the time. And so I did that. And actually it was Anne Heffron who's given me, I don't know, decades worth of wisdom over the last few years, but that just told me I don't have to do that. I'm allowed to say no. I'm allowed to protect myself. I'm allowed to, cautiously share when I want to and then pull back when I don't want to. I think that in each time I share, in each piece of writing, each Facebook post, workshops, interviews, anything that you decide to do, you have to kind of decide how far am I going to go, and then give yourself even those boundaries of knowing like what keeps me safe. I think it's really important to share your story as an adopted person. I think we are changing the world. I think adoption land in the last 3 years has absolutely transformed. I think it is a force to be reckoned with. I'm blown away and astounded by the level and the platforms that are being created and the ways that people are sharing, by the community that's being built. And I really think it's going to take a hell of a lot of work, frankly, for us to really get through to the bulk of society and change the narrative to listen to adoptees first and foremost. But I actually believe we're making headway. Whereas 2 to 3, maybe 4 years ago, I didn't believe that we could have the impact that I think we've had in the last couple of years. So I think that's really important. But I also think what's important about that is that you should only share your story if it benefits you. I think that's one of the things, and this is my humble opinion from my experience of sharing and frankly oversharing. If it benefits you to share your story, then you should share it. It benefiting someone else is secondary. That's not the most important thing. I am not a therapist. That's the other thing that I want to distinguish when I mentioned earlier, when I get emails and people say, can you help me work through this? And that's another piece of wisdom that I got from Anne Heffron. She's like the sideshow here because she's taught me everything I know. No, I'm kidding. But I am not a therapist, and I do not have the capacity or the knowledge or the bandwidth to take on everybody's situation, how similar or dissimilar it is to me, and walk them through that. I felt very obligated to that for a really long time. I still get nasty emails from people sometimes who will say, why won't you help me with this? And I kind of have a thing, honestly, I hope none of you have received it from me. I'm kidding, because I already know that you haven't. That's the only reason I would say that. But I kind of have a thing that I will send to people and just say, like, here's some resources, here's some links, here's some therapists. Find an adoptee therapist if you can. Definitely next step is an adoptee competent therapist. But I am not, you don't want therapy from me, trust me, first and foremost. Just because I'm out there sharing my story doesn't mean I'm equipped. Just because we have certain issues that we agree on or have experienced the same types of things doesn't mean that I'm equipped. I'm not a therapist, and it isn't my job also. If sharing your story is beneficial to you, if it is cathartic for you, if it empowers you, if it makes you feel like you're lightening your load, and if helping other people, if you believe sharing your story will help other people and that feels good to you, then share your story. Do it within the boundaries that feels comfortable to you. Again, helping people, your story helping people is a secondary positive from that. But you're not your duty. And as adopted people, I really struggle with that, with feeling like that's my obligation. I'm here and I have a purpose, which of course we all do, but my purpose isn't to benefit other people to my own detriment. So I think that's a really important thing for us to remember. I really want our stories shared. I really encourage adopted people to share all the time. One of the big things that I do at Dear Adoption, and that's so important to me, is elevating and sharing all platforms. At Dear Adoption and Reshma McClintock, I'm not in competition with anybody. There's a space for all of us. Each of us has a role in adoption land. Each of us has a season in adoption land. We take breaks, we come out, we come back. All of those things are really important, but I want everybody's voice to be heard. Collectively, if we can work together that way, I think we're the most powerful, even when it's people we don't totally agree with their message. The lesson there, though, and the hardest lesson I've learned, honestly, in the last year and a half is that I think that everybody should be heard, but I also think that everyone should be kind. And so that is the only caveat that I will put on that. If you aren't kind, then you need to find another way. If you can't be kind, then there isn't that. Then your platform needs some work. And I feel like that's a pretty simple thing to say. I had to be called out on that a couple of times, and I'm really glad that I was. I kind of went into things a long time ago thinking it doesn't matter what people are doing because everybody's struggling. No matter what, everybody gets the all the attention, all the I can't think of the right word. Everyone, all the shout outs. And then I just kind of learned actually that it's really important, and there's enough I don't know, garbage is probably the best word, in adoption land that we're all kind of dealing with. There's so much of that it's important for us to be kind and to be supportive of other people. And anyone who isn't kind and isn't supportive needs to find another way. And if we as a group are kind and supportive and encouraging, that is the right path. And I say that very boldly. And if you're not kind, then that's not the right path. And something's off, because it's actually not that hard to be nice. So I think going back a little bit, I've shared a lot about myself in adoption land. I've put hours and hours and hours into responding to comments, into talking. A lot of my adoptee voice elevation led me into family preservation advocacy. And that's really, my heart is in two places as far as adoption land goes. One is elevating adopted people, and two is preserving families and stopping unnecessary adoption, and just really changing that narrative. You guys have all heard me say this a million times. I'm a Christian woman. I'm a part of the church. I'm really not thrilled with the way the church has handled adoption. And so that's a big thing for me, is changing the narrative in the church. And so I sit with pastors, and it is really not my favorite thing to do, but it's important because I think that I do feel like in some sense that is my responsibility. Again, on my time on the day that I'm in the mood for it. I'm not going to do any of that to my detriment. But a huge and critical piece of my kind of evolving and telling my story over the years is that I will decide what I want to share and how I want to share it. And even when I'm asked questions, even when someone asks me a question and I feel like, oh, I don't want to go there, I really don't share very much about my husband. I mean, I like to talk about how handsome he is, because he really, really is. And you should know that. You would know that if you ever saw a picture of him. So, but anyway, so I like to talk about that, but I don't talk about my marriage very much, because that's a really sacred, intimate relationship for me, and really isn't anyone else's business. Also, he didn't sign up for that or any of this, really. If he only knew when he married me what was coming down the pipeline, my goodness. We don't have to go there. But I don't talk a lot about that. I share about my daughter, kind of the fun things, but not any of the really personal things about her life. And then even in my reunion, I have connected with some biological cousins. I never tell anyone, for the most part, I should say. I rarely share the closeness of that relationship, first cousin, second cousin, third cousin, 18th cousin, any of those details. Those are my details. And some of that is to protect them. But it's also because I, as an adopted person, that relationship is so important to me. And I have so little of that. I have one daughter, she's my biological connection. And then I have these cousins and they're mine. I'm staking claim to them. I don't want to share them with you. I don't really want to share them with their cousins. I don't want to share them with anyone because it's so important to me, that relationship. And so I'm really private about that. People ask me, especially Indian adoptees, ask me all the time how closely related we are. Can they look at my ancestry DNA stuff? Can they look at my 23andMe? Oh, would you send me a screenshot? I get a lot of that. And I'm just really, really private about that. And I don't see myself sharing much more about that because that belongs to me. And that's a part of my story that's important for me to keep. If at some point I felt like it was beneficial to me to share that, I might do that. But for now, it's something that's really personal to me, and I just typically now politely decline to answer. I just have a couple more things. One thing is also with adoptive parents. I've had really good experiences with adoptive parents, and I've had really challenging experience with adoptive parents, not speaking about my own, but with being asked questions, coming to conferences, sending me emails, being at the Q&As for the film. And that's a really hard thing. We talk a lot about this in Adoption Land, the emotional labor that we put out, sharing in order to educate. And that's a huge thing to me. If you know me at all, you know that the driving force behind everything I do in elevating adoptee voices is to create a better, safer space for future adopted children, for the kids who are adopted now. I think it's really funny. We as adopted adults, we didn't have that, most of us as kids. And so it's so funny to me. I kind of like to make fun of us a little bit because we like go to these conferences and we're like, will you be my friend? Will you be my friend? I'm adopted. We should be friends, because we get so excited about having adopted friends, which is great. And I love that. I have some really sweet, close friendships that have come out of Adoption Land. But the reason that we do this, so many of us, is for future adopted kids. And so it's important to me to educate adoptive parents and that they understand that. But also, I can only give so much. There are incredible, I mean, we know them, right? They're in our group, they're in our communities, adoptee therapists, and I want them to get that work. I want them to have that client, that adoptive parent. And so I send out names all the time and say, this person will, Joyce will meet with you online, or, reach out to Melanie, that, all these different experts in these areas. I think it's so important to really remember that we don't have to be the ones doing the work. And even if you are a therapist, remember, you should be paid to do your work. I think I wonder that. Actually, I've always wanted to ask an adoptee who's a therapist what that's like and how often they're asked to do work for free. Because those of us who aren't are certainly asked all the time to do work for free. So that'd be a really interesting thing to explore. So when I created Dear Adoption, I did it because I wanted there to be a platform. And Dear Adoption has been quiet for some time. Like I said, I've been really taking a break from Adoption Land, but there will be more coming in the future. But the thing that I love about Dear Adoption is the anonymity piece, the option to be anonymous, the option to be able to come and write and express all the things you need to express, to share your story, maybe sharing some of the things you never would share publicly if people could see your face, but being able to share those things, have the release of that, of knowing that it's out in the world, but still being able to kind of keep the mask on and self-protect. So I love that element of Dear Adoption. I also love seeing the faces. I love seeing the faces to go with the story. I think that's really, really powerful. But I think that being the opportunity to be anonymous, especially for adopted people, is really, really important. So, okay, let's see. I think overall, I want just to encourage everyone to share their story. It doesn't necessarily have to be out there publicly. It doesn't mean you have to jump on a stage. Maybe it's time for you. Maybe that's where you are, is at the point where you need to submit a proposal to Ian or to another conference or to any kind of workshop or something that's going on. Maybe you're the next brilliant TED Talk. Please be that. Please do that. If you're ready for that, go for it. I'm really big proponent of just go for it. If you feel like you want to do it and you're ready to be out there, then do it. If you're not, then I keep a Dear Adoption journal where I write my own. Obviously, Dear Adoption would be a real something else if, I went on there and posted all the things I think all the time. But so I keep one privately to myself and write things. And sometimes I think, oh my gosh, if somebody saw this, I would be so embarrassed or whatever. But for me, it's really important to get it out there. Reach out to Anne Heffron also. If you need somebody to help you write your story. I know she talked a couple weeks ago. But there's sharing your story or getting your story out there doesn't necessarily mean it has to be on some huge grand scale. Obviously, the height of my vulnerability and sharing is my film. It's like this big piece of vulnerability out there. And to be really honest, I have many days where I go back and think, I wish I could undo it. I wish I could not have my film out there, have my story out there for everyone to see, because it's very uncomfortable. Overall and in general, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad it's out there. I think that it is a really powerful film. I think it is really going to benefit a lot of people and open the eyes to a lot of people of, just the different adoption narrative that we know. But it's really scary and really hard to have that there. And so I prefer to write in my Dear Adoption journal in the privacy of my own home and, being safe and protected in that way. So the last thing is just figure out how to share your story. Sorry, I'm all over the place now. Figure out how to share your story. Make sure that it's beneficial to you first. Secondary part of that is benefiting and helping other people. I guarantee you that if you do enter the state of vulnerability in which you share your story with even one other person, you have the power to be transformative in their life or whoever's life is hearing your story. I think that that's really important. The last thing I want to do, and I put this list together really quick, so forgive me, there are so many people missing from this list. But I, due to the current state of our country and even adoption land, I really wanted to give you a few names of adopted women of color who are sharing and who I would suggest that you follow. I've learned a plethora of information from these people. I learn from them every day. I try to share their things. I'm so thankful that they're out there sharing and speaking and being vulnerable, especially in the seasons when I just don't feel like I can be, when I feel tapped out and like it isn't my season to do that. So here's just a few. I'm missing many. This literally made this list 2 minutes before we started. Jessica Sun Lee, J. Ron Kim, Linnell Long, Shaitra Werder-Leaker, Ferrara Swan, Adoptee Lily is her tag on, Adoptee Lily is on Instagram, not with her last name. Jasenia Palmer, Christina Nina, Angela Tucker, Melanie Chung Sherman, Mariami Lockington. It's actually also like a list of people that Haley has interviewed. But anyway, there are some really powerful women out there, women of color, who are sharing and doing really good work. And they have, two things that society kind of holds against them. One, that they're women. Two, that they're people of color. And actually three, that they're adopted and they might have a different view on adoption than the rest of the world. So anyway, I just really encourage you to listen to them, read their books, listen to their podcasts, follow their blogs, follow them on Instagram, glean everything that you can. And there's just so many people out there who are doing really good work. I've been really fortunate and privileged to get to be a part of any of these things. But I want people looking outward to the, to the community. Yes, I'll send the list out. I did see that chat. I want just to continue looking outward to all of you. And as we grow as a community, and again, as you step out in different seasons and then you come back in, if you create a new platform, I've had the opportunity and privilege to help so many people start websites and blogs for adoptees, because I want as much out there as we can. And I think that's a really important thing, just to kind of be working together. So anyway, that's really all I have. And I hope that there was, a nugget in there for some of you.